Hello and welcome to RC Model Reviews. My name is Bruce Simpson and today I'm going to be looking at the new JR, excuse me while I look at the label on the back because it's such a non-memorable name. It's the XG8 8-channel 2.4 gig radio from JR in Japan. Now, before I take a look at that, I want to tell you a little bit about how I'm going to be changing the way I do reviews from now on. These modern radios are quite complex. There's a lot of aspects that need to be examined when you're reviewing them, and it's not really practical anymore to fit it into a single YouTube video. So if I did that, it would probably be an hour-long video. You'd all fall asleep within the first few minutes. You'd knock your popcorn on the floor and spill your drink. Now, I don't want to be responsible for a whole lot of carpet stains all over the world, so I'm going to break the reviews up into 3 parts. There'll be the intro part, where I take the radio out of the box, I look at it and I tell you what immediately strikes me about the radio. We'll also look at some of the ergonomics of the radio, some of the basic features from the feature sheet, and that's about as far as we'll go, because then I'm going to take the radio, I'm going to do part 2. I'm going to put it on the bench behind me. We're going to examine all the techie side of things. We're going to see how it works with the spectrum analyzer. We'll throw it on the scope and check the latency, and we'll do a teardown. And that's not something I've done before. A teardown is where we take the radio and we pull it apart. Have a look inside, see how well it's manufactured, because especially with the top end radios, if you're spending a wad of cash, you want to make sure you're getting a quality product. And the amount of money you spend doesn't always translate into the quality of the product you receive. So we'll have a look and see whether you're really going to get a radio that's worth the money from a construction and design perspective. Then there'll be part 3. Now there'll be a bit of a delay to part 3 because I've decided a couple of times in the past I've reviewed stuff and then I've gone and used it and found, well, that should have been good, but it wasn't, or didn't look as good as it actually is when you look at it, compare it to the bench results. So I'm going to take the radios, I'm going to fly them in models for at least 2 to 3 weeks, probably a month. Then we'll come back and we'll look at how well they actually worked in the field. And that'll enable me to do other tests too, such as absolute range, because you can do ground tests for range, but they're affected by many factors. It's much better if you actually put a model in the air and you fly it until it flies out of range. How am I going to do that? Well, you'll have to watch and find out, but I've got a foolproof method for doing that, and you'll be able to see the results for all the radios that I test. Now, let's get on with the first part of the JR review. Here is the radio. Isn't it shiny? I call this the isn't it shiny part of the review. Fresh out of the box. This one's in black chrome, and black chrome apparently is sort of like chrome but black. So it looks a little bit like chrome from some angles, but it also looks black from other angles. It's actually quite a nice colour. It's growing on me. Didn't actually much like it when I took it out of the box, but it's growing on me. I'm not sure how well it will cope with the extremely hot conditions, high levels of sunlight we have here. I'm always concerned when I see a radio that's black, because when you leave them in the sun, they get really hot very quickly, and heat is the enemy of electronic components. We don't want our components and the bits inside the batteries and the LCDs and the integrated circuits, we don't want them getting hot, because the hotter they are, the shorter their life. Now, I'll be leaving this in the sun, of course, during the flight tests, and we'll see if it gets really warm. It's almost summer now, so it'll be a good test to see if this gets hot. I'm going to actually measure all the radios I test. I'm going to put them all beside each other in the sun for 10 minutes, then measure the case temperature and measure the temperature inside, because these are small points but very important if you live in a hot climate. On with the first looks. I pulled this out of the box and I picked it up and I thought, ooh, gee, that's nice. And it's not often I say that about a radio. Most radios are sort of square boxes and they all feel the same, you know, it's a square box. But this one's different. And of course, now we go to styling, and this has got some kind of revolutionary styling. It's just like the JR 11X that came out some time ago now. And I nearly bought a JR 11X, but I didn't. I'll tell you why in a minute. But this has that transformer face styling, and you'll either love this or you will hate it. Now, personally, I love it because it's different. For too long, we've had boxes. Originally, they were aluminium boxes, and then they covered them in vinyl to make them look even better. And then we went on to the plastic look, and everything was plastic, and it looked like plastic. And some radios had lots of little corrugations and little lines to make them look really sexy, but all it did was get filled up with dust and make them look old and tatty before their time. This is a different style. I like the fact this is different. I wouldn't care if it was still ugly. I like the fact that JR have broken the mold and they've gone out and made something that looks distinctive. Because I don't know about you, but I find the world is getting so samey. Look at cars. When I was a kid, I could look down the street and from hundreds of yards away I could tell you exactly what year and what make and what model a car was, because they all look totally different. They were distinctive. These days they all look the same because they're all designed for the same low coefficient of drag and things, and it's really, cars are getting quite boring, to be totally honest. radios have been too until now, and this looks much different. So even if you don't like it, you've got to admit it's different. So there we go. Now, as I say, I picked it up and look at this. I mean, last radio I reviewed was the DX8. And to be totally honest, I didn't much like it. It was comfortable enough, but I didn't much like the styling. It had a completely flat front, and it really was a box. It had rubber hand grips on the back, which apparently are held on with sticky tape or glue. I mean, that's pretty cheap, isn't it? This has got the hand grips molded into the case. It's actually part of the case, so these will not fall off. Even if it gets really hot, these won't fall off like a DX8 could, and you don't have to take them off to get inside or anything. It's brilliant, and it feels comfortable. It falls into your hand. Whether you're a thumb flyer like I am, or you're a tweaker, this case will do the job. It's really good. I like it. I like the design. The bonus point for the design of this radio. You may disagree with me. You've got to admit it's different. Now, another thing, I took it out of the box, and I thought, oh no, it's been damaged in transit. Something's happened to the box. Was fine. There's no damage to the box, but I thought, the radio's damaged. And why did I think that? Well, I'll hold it up so you can have a look. Look at the sticks. Look at the stick units. Now, I'll try and get them in the middle. Yeah, they're in the middle. You'll notice that they don't actually go straight up, as you'd expect. They're canted outwards. And I thought, oh, they're bent. But they're not. It's really a clever move on the part of JR. It's actually a good design, because if the sticks go straight up, then to get to the full inside thing, you've got to push your thumb a long way. Whereas if they're canted out slightly, it's not such a reach. And if you've got, average size hands like I have, you can go from side to side, full side to side without stretching, and that's really important to me, because I've got a lot of radios here, and everything from the Hi-Tech A9, and now I've got this JR X8, and I've got other radios. I've got JR 9X2, 9303, but the radio I use the most is the $40 Turnigy or the FlySky 9X, and the only reason I use that the most is because it's the only one that actually lets me reach right across to all corners of the sticks without breaking my thumb. I have to constantly reposition my fingers, and that, because I fly 3D, I'm constantly going from one extreme to the other. It's the only radio that's small enough to do that, but until now. This one does. This fits my hands. I could fly 3D with this. Lovely, great, bonus point. If you don't fly 3D, it's probably not that important, but it's just a point that I find very, very important when I'm choosing a radio. Another thing, remember I mentioned I nearly bought a JR 11X0, and I was all set to lay out my money until I actually got my hands on one. Then I decided, no, I don't want this radio. What was it that changed my mind? Well, it was the sliders. The JR 11X0 had sliders on the back, just about here where my fingers are now. It's a crap place to have sliders, because you can't put your fingers on the thumb and reach. You've got to reach your hand around to get to them, so you had to take your thumbs off the sticks or your fingers off the sticks. You might as well have knobs up the top. Useless. Now, obviously, I think a lot of other people also were not particularly impressed with that positioning of the sliders. So JR have probably listened to their customers and put them back where they should be, on the side. Look at that. See that? Sliders on the side, so you can use them while you're flying. Brilliant. If you're a glider pilot, if you fly fixed wing and you want to use retracts or flaps, you will like the sliders. Now, I should point out that this is probably going to be compared directly with the Spectrum DX8, because in a lot of ways it's functionally equivalent. It has the same sort of dual modulation 2.4 gig system. It's different, but it's the same concept as the Spectrum with the DSMX. This is DMSS, Spectrum's DSMX. It's two flavors of the same product. Although they're developed supposedly completely independently, they still achieve the same result using the same techniques. So that's one way it's similar to the DX8. It's similar also because it's got 8 channels. It has telemetry built into it. So in a lot of ways it's quite similar to the DX8. And many comparisons will be drawn, but so far this is just light years ahead of the DX8 where it counts, because DX8 doesn't have sliders. And this has got nice styling. The sticks on this have been designed with use in mind. And as I say, the sticks themselves are nothing special. I mean, they don't actually feel any different to the sticks on the Turnigy 9X, but that is probably a good thing, because the 9X sticks are really, really good. So I'm happy with these sticks. I could use these. I don't need ball gimbals and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's extra money, and it all just works. So I'm not too worried about that. One thing I noticed immediately was that the switches don't have any labels. There's all these switches across here, no labels. How do you know what does what? And I thought, oh, it's another sort of, botch up on the part of JR. But again, it's not a botch up, it's actually a feature. Because when you get the JR, it comes with a little set of stickers. And there's 3 sets. One is for gliders, one is for fixed wing, one's for heli. So when you buy the radio, it's nothing. It'll do all 3. But if you're predominantly a heli flyer, then you can label the switches with your heli settings, idle up and all that sort of stuff. Great. If you're a fixed wing flyer, you can label the switches with the fixed wing settings. So you don't have a switch that's got 4 or 5 different legends on it, 4 or 5 different labels on the one switch, because you just choose the ones you want to use. Brilliant idea, simple. Now, my only concern with that is that these stickers are stick on yourself, and since I fly mainly power and I use a lot of glow fuel, nitro, and I have oily hands, I'm wondering if they might come off. So we'll find out. That's why I'm doing the 3-part testing, and the 3rd part will be a result of in-field use for at least a few weeks. So we'll find out if the stickers come off. I'll let you know. What else is there? Oh, see this in the back here? There's a battery in there. Wouldn't have thought that, would you? And if you have a Turnigy 9X, you don't get the battery. You should get a crappy battery holder that doesn't even work properly, so you've got to buy a battery, but that's a $40 radio. This is hundreds of dollars. So you get a battery, but the good thing is, I mean, the last JR radio I bought was a 9X, which is the same as the 9303, and it came with a crap-ass 8-cell nickel metal hydride. I think it was about 700 or 800 milliampere hours. Useless. Didn't last more than an hour and a half of continuous use. Absolutely useless. Now, JR have done the right thing at last. They've put in here a different battery. It's not nickel metal hydride, it's not a NiCad, it's not even a LiPo, it's a lithium iron phosphate. Woohoo! Extra bonus point for JR, because lithium iron phosphate is the most appropriate battery technology for a transmitter. And now, I know a lot of people have put LiPos in their transmitters, and they say, oh, they work great, I can fly for weeks without charging, blah, blah, blah. And it hasn't burnt my house down yet, but LiPos are not the appropriate battery for a transmitter because they do have issues. If you leave your radio on and a battery goes completely flat, your LiPo is probably going to be stuffed. Now, you may be able to revive it, but you don't know if it's going to fail at some stage while you're flying. So I wouldn't use a LiPo that had been fully discharged by leaving the transmitter on. Lithium iron phosphate, different story. I've lost track of the number of times I've left lithium iron phosphate packs on, completely discharged them, recharged them. They're back to good as gold, full capacity, and I've used them for hundreds of charge cycles after that without any issues. So I like that. Downside, because nothing's perfect, they have the charge circuitry built into the transmitter apparently, which means that you're supposed to plug your little AC charge adapter in the side and it'll do the charging. Now, I don't like that because quite often I don't get time to charge my batteries before I go to the field. I like to rush out to the field, plug my transmitter in, plug my flight pack in and charge while I'm having a coffee or setting up my models. And then by the time I've done that, there's enough charge to go flying for the whole day. Won't happen with this unless we can get at the battery and plug it in separately, because the charge circuitry in here would probably be a slow charge. You need mains or whatever, so that's not quite so good. It should have a fast charge. You can put your 4-button charger in and charge up the transmitter pack in 45 minutes or an hour or so. That would be really great. Maybe they'll listen, I don't know. There you go. If you're a JR user before, you'll recognize the little rotating thumb wheel and the 4 buttons down the side. That hasn't changed. But what has changed, and thank goodness it's changed, I'll just turn this on for you. Let's turn it on. You watch what happens. Ooh, see that? It's beeping incessantly at me, and there's a red light up here. It means danger, Will Robinson. You know, aliens are attacking. I pull the throttle stick down. Woohoo! That changes to blue, says everything's okay, and this, you know, changes to the screen. You'd expect to notice it's a nice white LCD, good resolution, good size, backlit, easy to read, everything you want. My old 9303, it was crap. The LCD in that, even on a perfectly fine day, you had to squint and hold it up at certain angles to read the LCD. Thank goodness they've fixed it. And it seems to be a higher resolution than the DX8 LCD, which is good, because I wasn't that impressed with the DX8 LCD. It looked like everything was made out of children's building blocks. It was horrible, awful. This is a much better LCD from where I stand. So there you go. There's the LCD, the ergonomics. Brilliant, lovely. You're probably less likely to leave this on because that's quite a bright light. You'll notice that if you stick it in the back of the car and forget to turn it off, which is good as well. Now, there's not much else to look at from the outside. It's got the typical JR trims, which change in tone as you get near the ends. And the trim switch is actually really good. One of the biggest things I don't like about cheaper radios like the Turnigy 9X is the trim switches are often quite, you know, they don't have a click to them, and sometimes they don't work, and sometimes they stick. But the JR trim switches, beautiful, love them. Now, if you're used to the other JR radios, you'll notice that this one has a digital trim on the throttle, not a manual trim. Now, people are divided in their opinion of that. Should I have a manual trim or a electronic trim? I prefer the electronic, to be totally honest, because I got used to it. If you want to have cut, you set up a switch for throttle cut instead of pulling the trim down. Much easier. So there you go, that's the radio. Now I'm going to look closely at the programming, and one thing that I have noticed already, within 5 minutes of turning this on, I found a bug in the software. It's possible to get the LCD confused so that one screen overwrites the other and it all becomes a bit of gibberish. That's not a major, it doesn't stop it working, but it is a software bug and that needs to be addressed. Fortunately, like all the other JR or all the other modern 2.4 radios apart from the 9X, Turnigy 9X, you can update the software. you can do it with an SD card, and the Hi-Tech Aurora 9 uses a separate little box and a lead. The Futaba's use an SD card, and the Spectrum I think uses an SD card. This also uses an SD card, and to show you how nice the people at JR have been, they give you a 2 GB SD card so you can do it. You don't have to go and buy one. There it is, sweet. So I'm sure JR will fix that bug in the firmware. I'll report it to them. They'll fix it up and download a new version, put it in, everything will be honky-dory good as gold. There's the transmitter, that's it. They even give you in the instructions, oh, excuse me, they even, disappear from shot, here I come, they even give you a little bit of a thing to tell you how to position your transmitter aerial for best results. How many other radios do that? I haven't seen that in any other instructions, how to bend it at the right angle, the best optimum angle to use. Very good. And speaking of manuals, the manual is actually much better than any of the earlier JR manuals. I think that's helped because the programming is so much easier with the new software. It's only that thick. All my other JR manuals are much thicker than that, and it's simple to follow. It's easy. That's the whole lot. Sailplane, glider, the whole lot, all in there. Helicopter programming, the whole lot. Brilliant. Good marks on the manual. I'll be evaluating how well the software works when I set it up in different models and do the mixing for elevons and V-tail and all that sort of stuff, and camber on the wing. So we'll try out all those functions, see how many work, how they work, and how easy they are to set up. Now, the receiver. Here is the receiver. This is the standard 8-channel receiver. You'll notice it has 2 antennas, diversity. Ta-da! Doesn't have the need for satellite receivers. So Spectrum now, I think, is the only radio that needs satellite receivers. All the others, Futaba, FreeSky, JR, all seem to work fine without satellite receivers. Why do Spectrum still sell satellites? Because in theory, DSMX, they shouldn't need it. Maybe they do it because they can make more money. It's probably all it is. You don't need satellites. But what's this other blob hanging off here? What's this thing? Well, this is the telemetry transmitter. This has a little, what they call a chip antenna in there, tiny little antenna. And this basically takes care of sending the data back to your transmitter, the voltage, altitude, all that sort of stuff. Why didn't they use the same system as Hi-Tech and FreeSky and others, where basically they just use some chip inside and use one of these antennas? Well, I guess because this has a few benefits. Well, they're not great. It means you can design, perhaps the chipset they used in here didn't support transmitting, and they had to have a separate chipset to do the transmitting side. When I do the teardown, we'll be pulling the receiver apart too, and we'll find out information like that, why they've gone this way. But suffice to say, I mean, that's not too big for the average size model, too big for a foamy, but they do have little Parkfire 4-channel ones that are available, much smaller size. And of course, coming with that, there's also this. This is their telemetry hub. Ta-da! Well, it's not really a hub, is it? It's just a board with a whole lot of plugs on it, which makes it much simpler. You don't have to use a bulky hub. It's not that small, I suppose, but still. And they've sent me a number of sensors to try. This is temperature sensor, so this will tell you how hot your batteries are getting or your engine or whatever. That's pretty standard fare. Most of them have that. And then down here we've got the altitude sensor. Now I don't know if this will work as a Vario or anything. I haven't tried it all yet, just taken it out of the box. But it's really useful to have altitude. That's telemetry. This should be standard in the telemetry equipment on all radios that offer telemetry, because in most countries you are limited to your maximum altitude you're allowed to fly. And here in New Zealand you can only fly up to 400 feet unless you're in a specially exempted area, and it's the same I think in the USA. So you need to be able to tell when you're approaching 400 feet. Ideally this will trigger an alarm on the transmitter so that you don't have to keep looking at the altitude to see how high you are. I'm not sure, haven't tried it. It'll be part of the flight testing and perhaps part of the bench testing. But suffice to say, that's a really small sensor. I like it. We'll see how it works. I don't think these come stock. I think you've got to buy these extra. I'm not sure, because JR just sent me this in the box. So maybe it's not standard equipment. I will find out for you and let you know later on. So suffice to say, I like the radio. First impressions are really good. It's what I would expect for a radio that costs the amount of money this costs. I mean, it's not a cheap radio. It's not a cheap radio. Downsides, because nothing's perfect. If you're in America, you're probably never going to see this, at least not with the DMSS in it, because there seems to be some kind of Horizon are obviously going to protect their Spectrum brand. They're not going to bring in something that competes directly and introduce a new radio frequency standard to their product range. I look on the back here, it has a CE, well, it doesn't have a CE on there, but it has a CE rating, but it doesn't have any kind of FCC certification. So I don't know if JR are actually going to get it certified for the USA. It's if it's not, then you're probably going to not be able to use it legally in America, which will make Horizon very happy, because they make more money selling Spectrum with DSMX or JR with DSMX than they do with DMSS. And in reality, I suspect, I can't prove it because I haven't done the bench testing yet, and the flight testing, I suspect DMSS will work every bit the same as DSMX, so there'll be very little to choose from. That's it for today, children. I thank you for watching. Stay tuned for part 2, because it'll all be going on the bench, the back will be coming off, there'll be bits flying everywhere, and we'll be testing every aspect of the radio and tell you whether you're getting what you think you're getting when you look inside. And then part 3. So, coming up very shortly, you've got the A9. I'll be doing the same thing I've just done with the XG8. Oh, I wish they'd give it a name you could remember. I'll be doing the same thing that I've just done with the high-tech Aurora 9, and so you can see that the first sort of aspect of that. Now, I've already done a lot of the bench testing with that, so that following review will come up pretty quickly, and you can expect to see the second part of this review on the JR system within the week, and then 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month later, we'll do the final wrap up and the flight tests and all that sort of stuff, because I'll be putting this in a number of models, trying it out. And also that'll include part of the telemetry review, because we're looking at the radio control aspect. I'm going to do the telemetry aspect separately, so I'll do how the telemetry systems work, because there's a lot of stuff coming out now in telemetry. But in the meantime, thank you for watching this video. I hope you haven't nodded off. I hope there aren't stains on your carpet from the drink you've spilled. And just a reminder, if you are so inclined and you want to see more of this stuff, which is actually starting to cost a lot more money than I'd ever envisaged, you can pop around to the rcmodelreviews.com website and you make a little donation, 50 cents, 50 bucks, I don't care. It all helps me buy the gear and the equipment and that to review, to keep you informed, so that when you're buying stuff in the RC marketplace, you're buying stuff that you know is good, and you can avoid the stuff that you know is bad. Bye for now. See you real soon.